Hi there, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar by TEFL Academy. I'm Sheila Baker, and I'm glad that you could join us today. I'll be presenting to you today on teaching listening. That's an exciting topic. I'm from Canada, and it would be great to see where you're all from. If you could just say hi in the chat and where you are today. I've been a teacher for about 120 years, actually for about 25 years, and I've been doing teacher training for over 5 years. And during this time, I have taught students from basically every continent, all the way from Brazil to Poland to Japan, Korea. I see we've got people from South Africa. Welcome. Several people from South Africa. Also from Canada, Victoria. Welcome. South Africa, the UK. Awesome. Yeah, quite a variety. Awesome. The UK. New York. All right. I know we're all in different time zones, so we appreciate you all being here. All these amazing people. Awesome. England, from the UK. Awesome. Welcome everyone. So we'll be focusing on listening today, and it's important, the different types of listening, and finally how to plan an effective listening lesson, which we all want to know and are looking forward to that. More people from the UK and the US. All right, welcome. Thank you. All right, so let me just change the slides here so you can see it better. So why must we practice? Well, we know it's a receptive skill in addition to another receptive skill. What's the other one? We've touched on that, I'm sure. The other receptive skill, you can just put it in the chat. It is reading, where students receive the information. And think back to the course content or the webinar on reading. And yes, of course, you got reading. Thank you. And I'm sure you'll find lots of similarities between teaching reading and teaching listening. You'll find that throughout the presentation. And it's unavoidable because students come across various types of listening throughout the day. It's just part of everyday life, or they might just listen for pleasure, or as we mentioned, to communicate. So we do need to teach it and help our students to become more effective at listening. And why wouldn't want to make it easier for our students? It's one of the most important skills. If you think back to college life, quite a bit of the information we received was through listening, wasn't it? Yes, we did read books too and did other things. There was some writing and speaking, but quite a few of those lessons we had to listen. So let's take a look at how we can make this better for a student. So first of all, why is it difficult or stressful for students? Well, it does take a lot of concentration, doesn't it? Especially if we're doing extensive listening or intensive listening. Students must fully focus on the material. It does get tiring after a while, or they might get frustrated because they miss a word or miss some information, and then they can either be less motivated or just get frustrated and tune out. We don't want that. If they're listening to some authentic material, let's say where native speakers speak, they can talk quite quickly, and or the accent might influence their how much they get out of it. Of course, there is the connected speech where people use reduced forms, the weak forms, and again, instead of want to, they say wanna. And oh, one of my students asked me, "Oh, what's interesting?" He didn't realize that was the word interesting, where the T gets dropped. Just like some of the other words. Can you think of another word where the T gets dropped? You can just put it in the chat. Like Toronto, right? The second T gets dropped. Or instead of 20, we often say 20. Or dentist. Right? So it's quite a few of these silent letters. Listening itself, the word listening. Thanks, Eleni. Yes, the T is silent. Good. The internet. Right? All right. And then of course, there are other words where there is quite a bit of a difference, the way it sounds and the way that we write it down. And even just think of number one, right? One is quite different from O and E. And there are quite a few other words. If you think of the word choir, see who can write down the word choir. Give you a few seconds to do that. See who gets it right. Oh yes, Samantha got it, and so did Renuka, Julie. Okay, a lot of you got it. Well done, CHOIR. Well done. But again, this would be something challenging for students, or the accent might be an influential factor. And which accent should our students listen to? Well, we want to expose them to a variety of accents. It's not just a general U.S., but the southern U.S. Again, it's a little bit different, or New Zealand, Australian, British, of course, Scottish, Irish. Yeah, we want to do a variety, like Shrek, the Scottish accent. Actually, Mike Myers was already halfway done recording Shrek, and then Steven Spielberg told him, "You know what? You should do it in the accent that." And then he thought about it, that his mom used to read bedtime stories to him, and he went back and re-recorded, and that was part of the success of Shrek, I'm sure. But again, it would be challenging for the students to listen to some of these accents, so it's good to expose them to the various accents. And then how do we process listening? There are the two types you may have heard of: top down and bottom up. And then if you're not familiar with these, not to worry, we will explore these further. And they can also be used in conjunction with each other. So if you think of top down processing, is when we use the context and we try to get the overall gist of the listening to construct the meaning. For example, if there is a crime story, we already know there's going to be some kind of a perpetrator, like a killer or a thief, and there's going to be a detective, and there's going to be some clues and evidence. So we kind of know what to expect, and then we can get our students ready for this as well. Why not, right? And make it easier for them. Maybe don't get some of the gory details too much, but we know there might be a police investigation, a trial. So all of this prior knowledge helps our listeners makes it easier for them as to what they going to be hearing, gets them ready, gets the brain primed for this information, and then it makes sense what they hear. It's called activating schemata, if you wish to know the academic term for it. It's basically this background knowledge that we already have, whether it's in the first language or whether they have this in English. We want them to get ready for that information, and that makes it easier for them to receive the information once they do hear the listening that we want them to hear. Now, bottom up, on the other hand, is when you start with the small details, the individual sounds, the minute details, and then you construct the bigger picture, so to speak. It's almost like putting a puzzle together, right? So you get the little bits of pieces, and then eventually you get to see the big picture. So we listen to individual sounds, or listen for individual sounds or words, phrases, sentences, and then try to build these up to arrive at the meaning. So it may not be the most efficient method of listening if it's taken to the extreme, but students, they can get stuck in the small details, and then they might miss the overall meaning. But it's also, sometimes this type of listening is also essential for them, so we do need to teach it. So one type of listening is like seeing the forest and then noticing the trees and the little animals. The other one is starting with the squirrels and the tree branches and the bushes, and then eventually seeing the forest at the end of the big picture. So now that we understand how to process information, let's take a look at the different types of listening. So intensive is the one where we listen for all the detailed information, such as sports results might be something that students would enjoy listening to, or could be a recording where students have to answer questions. And this material is generally graded at a specific level. And if you think of one in real life, what would be an example of intensive listening? You could put it in the chat. Other than sports, it could be weather, for example. We need to know how to dress for the day. Do I need to take my umbrella today? All right, homework instructions, absolutely. Webinars, that's funny. All right, the news, yeah. And some of the vocabulary gets repeated in the news, asking for directions, very good. Yeah, exactly, good. Extensive is when we listen for the general understanding, often pleasure listening, just like there's pleasure reading, where students just read a book for pleasure. There's also pleasure listening. And this one doesn't require that much concentration, of course. And maybe we don't really need to pay that much attention. We just need to know who won the game, let's say. Or if you are listening to a crime podcast, for example, again, you just want to know the outcome. Who's done it, and no one is really going to question the students about it. It's just whatever they get out of it. So it's a low stress situation. Can you think of some examples of that? Oh yeah, job interview was for the intensive. For extensive listening, yeah, musics and songs for sure. Yeah, those are great. Uh-huh. Yeah, that's still the news. If it's specific details, it's still the intensive. Good. Short stories. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You know how you can get a book on either on a CD or the audio version, and then students can just listen to that. The news, just listening to it in the background. Yes, good podcasts are great. Yeah. One of our teachers, one of my colleagues, asked Jean Chrétien, one of the former prime ministers of Canada, to record an excerpt, and he did it, and the students listened to that. So that was fun. An audiobook, yeah, good. So we got lots of good ideas here. All right, with the interactive is the one where we want our students to respond to that. Non-interactive is when there is no response required, just like listening to the radio, watching TV, watching TED Talks. So again, the interactive, of course, it's more engaging, but we can make the non-interactive one, and we can ask the students to respond to it later if we want them to watch certain series like Friends. They usually like that, or the newer one is the Big Bang Theory, because the characters are known to them, and they often would have watched it in their own language. But even if they didn't, that's fine, because they can still get to know the characters, and then that way just follow along the storyline. I kind of like stuff like that. All right. And then how can we practice intensive listening? You've seen the gap fill exercises. It's like a close exercise where students listen and then fill in the missing information. Just like if it's somebody filling out a form, they would have to provide their address, for example, or their occupation. So they watch out for those phrases. Could be true and false, or not given. The not given is a little bit tricky. Or you can focus on just elements of connected speech. For example, I mentioned earlier, wanna is want to. What about I gotta go? I gotta go. What is the actual phrase? If you were to write it out, let's see. When you finish the conversation at the end, I gotta go. Let's write that down. See who gets it. It's more than gotta go. More than I have to go. It's more than that. Yes, Samantha got it. I have got to go. That's it. And so did Cass. I have got to go, right? So we kind of have to decipher that, right? I have got to go. Good. How about if we say, I'd have said hello if I'd seen him? Where do you hear the contraction? How many and which ones? I'll say it again. I'd have said hello if I'd seen him. A few seconds. Okay, good. Yeah, Delph, thank you. And good. We have the I apostrophe D for I would. And then we also have the apostrophe VE for have. Good. And at the end, I'd seen him. The I'd is the I apostrophe D is if I had. Seen him, right. So just in one sentence alone, having three contractions is a lot, right? Isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for those contributions. So this fast connected speech in real world can be challenging. One of my students said, "Teacher, I can understand you just fine in class, but when I go out there, I don't understand people." Yes, because they don't really slow down on purpose, right? They just speak at their natural speed and rhythm, and they don't compensate for the students. And sometimes when my students don't hear that, instead of slowing down, they get louder. Well, that's not the issue. Our students can hear them, but they do need to slow down a little bit for them. So some people are good at that, but not everybody has the time or the patience. So we want to get our students ready to um, let them understand authentic speech at the normal speed. And did you know on YouTube you can adjust the speed as well? You can slow it down and you can make it faster if you wish to do that. So that's good to know. So now let's take a look at extensive listening. So of course we want to encourage your students to do listening outside the classroom, find out what they're interested in, and try to encourage that type of listening. You can recommend documentaries. For example, I don't know if you've heard of this series, Life After People. Some of my students really like that. Just imagining what would happen to the earth if there were no people. So they kind of get into that, and then they've got something to talk about. Just like a book club, right? You've got a book to read, and then you discuss it. The same thing. They watch a series or a movie or something, and then they're happy to talk about it. Or Spotify. Well, there's lots on YouTube, Audible, or other authentic material. There's lots in the technology age that we're living in. And then standard procedure is just like with a reading lesson, we want to get our students ready for that before they listen. So what can we do? So here are 5 steps to have a successful lesson. Just like with any other lesson, you want to have a warmer, get our students ready, and that will help with the top-down processing, gets them ready, engages them. You can use visuals, brainstorming to come up with ideas. And then after that, it's a good idea to pre-teach vocabulary, just like you would do with a reading activity. And then you need to choose the level, of course, appropriately to make sure that it is at the right level, pronunciation, right? And then you can look out for the any connected speech or those tricky contractions that we have talked about. All right, and then they get ready to listen. So the first listening, they listen just for the gist to kind of get the main idea of what is the overall meaning, just like when you skim a text quickly. And then, were you correct? Did you predict it? Right? So did you predict it accurately, what they were going to talk about? All right. Yeah, the speed option is there. They're discussing, some of you are discussing that in the on YouTube. Yeah, under settings. Yeah, thank you for that. All right. And then after they've listened, what comes next? You can get them listen a second time, and this time they already know what it is about. They know the big picture, so now we can focus in on the little details. So 7 or 8 questions, maximum 10, no more than that. That's enough. And where is the speaker, for example? What does he say about if it's at a party? What were the things that they mentioned? All of these little things we can ask. And you can even ask the students to ask each other questions. Right? You don't have to do all the asking, but it's good to have some questions prepared in advance. And I also, not just I, but most experts recommend giving the questions in advance so that the students know what to listen for. Unless you're doing like exam prep or IELTS where you only get to hear the questions as you're listening. If you're doing that, then that's fine to give the questions only during the listening, but or TOEFL, the students only see the questions after. But when you're practicing listening, it's actually good to give the questions in advance so that the students know what they're listening for. All right. And last but not least, the follow-on tasks. So students you can ask them to discuss it, compare notes. If there's something they miss, they can get it from each other. You don't have to provide all the information. You can have a follow-up speaking activity where they discuss, they can predict what will happen next, or how could it have ended differently, or was this a good way to solve the problem if there was a problem. They can role play. For example, just the other day we had listening, and after that we actually went to see the pyramids of Egypt, and then the role play was that one of the students was the tour guide and the other student was the tourist, and if there were 3 in the group, then there were 2 tourists, and then the tour guide was showing them around. So that was a good way to review and the information and to use the information in a freestyle activity. And then again, we try to decompress and then relate back to the topic. So this allows students to recycle the vocabulary and to use the information that they acquired, because sometimes the issue is they don't have enough ideas. And this way, after having listened to the material, now they do have enough ideas to talk about or to write about. You can also ask them to write. It can even be a blog where they can all comment on each other. Like nowadays, it can be a Google document where they can edit each other's writing. So again, you don't have to do all the editing. All right, and it's also good for them to get the answers from one of their peers, right? Instead of you doing all of that, it's good for them. For the weaker student, they get the information. For the stronger student, it boosts their confidence because they were able to teach their classmates something. And then some tips for teaching listening lesson. Of course, it's still good to use visuals to encourage prediction. For example, if I was going to share listening about Japanese food, I would show 3 images about Japan, like the mountain of Fuji, the cherry tree blossoms, and then maybe sushi. And then what is common among these 3 images? And then most often they do get it that it is about Japan. And then even during or after the listening, you can again use visuals. You can use authentic materials as well. And then it makes it easier for students to connect the new information to these images. It creates that hook in the brain, and it also helps with the top-down processing. All right, and again, it's good to give students a chance to compare their answers, because if they didn't get it again, they want to know. Or you can provide a transcript as well. Some of the TED Talks, often they have transcripts nowadays. And then I will show you some if we have time for that. All right. And tips for further tips, again, as I mentioned, provide the questions before listening, not during, not after, before, so that the students know what to listen for. And then make sure, if you're using authentic material, to grade it, right? So it's the right level, and then that will help students become more successful. So that's enough from me. It's been about half an hour, and I'll turn it over to you. So please feel free to ask questions in the chat box, and then I'll do my best to answer them, as many as I can. Just try to keep them related to listening if possible. And I'll have another 30 minutes to do that. And while I'm waiting for questions to come in, I'll share one with you. One website that's really good for listening. It's called ESLlab.com. You might have heard of it. And the reason why I like it, because they've got different levels: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And they've also got academic listening, which is really helpful for test preparation, or if you just want, if you're teaching EAP, English for academic purposes. All right, and it's managed by Randall, teacher Randall, and then he often records himself and his son and his wife. It's a lot of fun. All right, functional question: are these webinars available after the event? Yes, they are recorded, and they will be published on YouTube. Yes, yeah, that's fine. You can watch them later, no problem. All right, you are most welcome. Yes, it was my pleasure to be here. And then let me know what else I can help you with. And I can also share with you another useful website called eslvideo.com. And again, the reason why I like it, I shared the link in the chat, because they've got different levels: beginners, intermediate, advanced. And after the students listen, they've got the questions right there prepared for you. They've got the transcript. So they've got multiple choice questions often, and they also have fill in the blank. And they sometimes even provide the words for the students to use. So it's really, really helpful. All right. To pilot the navigator method to new students. Okay, what do you mean by navigator method? I'm not sure what you mean by that. You mean when the students just figure it out on their own? Is that what you mean, Danielle? Yeah, if you can explain that to me, I can respond to that. Okay, Leo says extensive listening is just helpless with making real progress. Progress, I suppose, because students do not usually focus while listening. What do you think? Well, it is true that they don't focus, but when you do extensive listening, you're not supposed to focus, right? That's the whole purpose. And it still gets the brain thinking in English, right? Which is what we want our students to do, to get used to hearing English, processing English, start thinking in English. So it's actually more beneficial than you think, right? So I still recommend that our students do extensive listening. just like reading, right? When you're reading something, you're not going to look up every word, but eventually you'll get to know who the thief is, or a robber, or what the difference is, right? You'll get to know by the end of the book, even if you don't get all the words. That's okay. It's not a problem. All right, teenagers, I feel I have less information about most of the things. If I show them the way you told them about Japan, they have no idea. Okay, well, make it more obvious. If it's teenagers, then you might want to include a popular singing group that's popular in Japan, or Japanese animation is very popular with some of the teenagers, so they might get the idea that you're talking about Japan, or Hello Kitty or something, something that is related to them. But I know what teenagers you do. They will keep you on your toes. You gotta they burn through material quite quickly, so you gotta have a lot of extra materials available, which can be a good thing. All right, pairing weaker students with stronger students. Yeah, that's definitely helpful. Extensive listening is actually good for absorbing the feel and sounds. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it's not just English, but they're also getting to know the culture, right? So I usually ask them to listen to something that is also beneficial in their life, like how to manage your time, or how to organize your home, or how to, oh yeah, that was another successful one, how to eat healthy on a limited budget. My students really like that series. So it's not just English, but it's life skills that they're also learning that are useful, that is practical, that they can put to good use in their life. So they really like it when I give them topics like that. Or another time I asked them to listen to TED Talks. And again, what they got out of it was amazing. And another time I asked them to listen to marketing material. And their assignment was to prepare a presentation on subliminal messages. You know, when they give you these hidden messages, they try to get you to buy the product. And it was amazing what they came up with. So they really get a lot out of these projects. All right, one more student from South Africa. Welcome. Thank you for being here. All right, any other questions related to listening? Listening homework task for students. All right, I do that. I assign homework as listening, and they all have to listen to the same thing. And then that way, when they come back the next day, we can compare notes. So that's really helpful. Another thing I have done is I've asked them to listen to the news, and I give them the news source, CBC in Canada or BBC in England, so some main channel. And what I do is I ask them to listen, and then I ask them to read the newspaper and then compare. And again, they'll find lots of similarities, but some differences too. So that's another helpful exercise if you want to take it to the next level. Or just the website. There are lots of websites that some of them I mentioned. I would assign a TED Talk, and then I ask them get 3 main ideas and 1 detail out of it. And then they have to post it on Google Classroom. They post it to the stream. And even my student teachers really enjoy that activity because you get so many ideas out of one TED Talk, right? So again, I'll just share that with you. I'm sure all of you have seen it, but I'll post it here anyway. Oh, sorry. Language. Why is it posting language? Just a second. Didn't grab the whole URL. But yeah, again, TED Talk. And you might want to choose something where the transcript is available. And of course, tell the students not to look at the transcript until they have listened to it first. So let them listen first. And it's good for you to have a transcript too. But if there isn't one, that's still fine. No problem. Okay, Samantha asked what to do if I have a student that is really struggling to hear and understand when out in the real world, especially when confronted by speedy talkers with different accents. Well, that does happen to quite a lot of the students. The most trouble students have from Vietnam, because Vietnamese is so different from English, but even from for other speakers. Well, again, they need more practice. So even into the classroom, you can bring in those faster speakers and then let them analyze it, right? Just see. At the beginning, they might only understand like 40% of that. But the next time it might be 50 and then 60. And then they progressively work their way up until they get more comfortable. And if they get 80 to 90%, that's good enough. It doesn't have to be 100, right? We're not trying to get them to understand everything. Some students will try to do that, and that's not the goal. If you understand 80% of something, that's pretty good. You can get the most out of it that way. All right. Yeah. Samantha says that it happened to her in French, learning French. Again, you've got the different accents. Well, in Quebec, in Canada, again, it's quite different from the real French. So my students tell me, oh, it's not really French, but yeah, again, just different accents. That's all. All right. And yeah, so TED Talk is a good one. And they're usually like 15 minutes, not that long. Some of them are even shorter. Another good one is rongcheng.com. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. He's been around for a long time. I'll put that in the chat as well. Again, lots of resources there. Would help classes would help for students of slightly higher levels to listen to tongue twisters. Help them. Yeah, tongue twisters are a lot of fun. And they can just say it slower, right? They don't have to go really fast. Let them say it slower, and then eventually they'll get at it. Can you guys say this one? She sells seashells by the seashore. Is the one that comes to mind. I'll put it in the chat. She sells seashells by the seashore, and then get the students to say it slower, and then eventually they'll try to say it faster. She sells seashells by the seashore. She sells seashells by the seashore, and it is challenging. One of my students, some of my students, they have trouble saying the word zoo. You don't think it's a hard word, but it is because of the Z, the presence of the Z. And some of my students, they cannot say this word, sushi. For the life of them, they can't say it. But again, we try our best to get them to say it. And another good one, because it's got a beaver in it, it's especially good for Canada. You might have heard this one. Um, how much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? And of course, woodchuck is the beaver. All right. Yeah, definitely. Tongue twisters are a lot of fun. I always include them. Samantha says, a shipping ships. Okay, that's a good one too. Have I ever taught English to deaf students? No, I haven't. That would be quite challenging. You might have to use ASL instead of ESL. ASL, American Sign Language, perhaps, like signing, which I don't do. That would be something would have to be referred to someone who is more experienced with that. Yeah, no, I haven't. But I have had students who've had social anxiety, like severe social anxiety. And again, we tried our best to calm him down because, yeah, he would be quite anxious with a lot of people around. He couldn't help it. That's just how he was. And I also had some other students that, um, again, just like to be alone all the time, like didn't want to do pair work, didn't want to do any group work. He just always wanted to work alone. So we tried our best to give him something that he could work on because it just created too much anxiety for him to work with other people. All right. Anything else? Oh, did you give up, Sam? About using, was it about using tongue twisters? All right. And then Renika asked, would you assign any activity along with listening tasks at home? Okay, so you mean an activity that is connected to listening? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, why not? Yep. And Allo is another one that has been around for a long time. And they have the audio, the video, the transcript, the quiz, and the vocabulary. And one is called 1 Minute English. So again, that's quite popular because 1 minute, right? It's, how many could it be, right? So it doesn't seem so intimidating. So that's another one that you can take advantage of. And another one that I like is the live worksheets. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but the reason why I like it, first of all, it's interactive. And students get the answers pretty much right away. And then when they click on check, they get like a score, like 9 out of 10. And it's written on it just like as if you were to write it on their paper. So it's cool. Yeah, and live worksheets again. If you find it, you do a search for it for the topic that you want to do. There are lots that are available for listening. Lyrics gaps is another one. They take a look at songs and then students have to fill in the blanks. And the reason I like it, like let's say if you have to fill in the word inside, then they'll have the word there scrambled, and then the students have to unscramble it. That's the beginner version. The intermediate version is the whole word is missing, and the students have to choose from the given words. And the advanced, there's nothing to choose from. They'll just fill in the blank. So you see the different levels of listening. And another thing you can do if there's no audio available is like this, the 5-minute English. And you can just get one of the students to read it, right? Or you can read it. You can be the CD player, the audio source. And then the students have to get the information out of it, right? So you don't really need an audio source all the time, right? Or you can get one of the other teachers to come in to your room, and then you can offer to do the same, just like for 10 minutes. It's good for them to listen to another voice. Or another thing you can do is just ask all the students to close their books, and then one of the students reads from the book, and then the students will take notes on that, and they all have the book, right? So they can always check the text later. So again, that's an alternative. All right, Samantha asks, how can I? Oh yeah, you gave up on learning French because you got frustrated. Oh, but yeah. Hopefully in the future you can revisit that. And you ask, how can I keep the students from getting discouraged if they don't understand the speedy talker? Well, again, that is challenging. So we need to choose the material accordingly, that what they're capable of handling. If it's really way over their head, then no, I wouldn't use that. Or as I mentioned on YouTube, you can slow it down, or you can prepare more material for them in advance to get the students ready for the new vocab, the new phrases, those contractions that we talked about. Yeah. All right. So remember to have a pre-listening, during listening, and then a post-listening activity. The most common one is the fill in the blank. That's what you see a lot of the books use. And remember to give the questions when. When should we give the questions? Before, during, or after? I hope you said before. Another thing I do is we do an activity. Um, paper folding, like origami and things like that. And you just give students the steps to do it. And then eventually they have, those fortune teller cookies made out of paper. You can just get them to do that. And we've also done a paper cup, how to fold a paper cup. And it was useful because they could use it for drinking. Yes, Renuka said before. Excellent. Good answer. Another thing you can do is just dictation. Basically, the students just write down the words or the phrases that they hear, and then see how they do on that. You can also do detecting mistakes. For example, which word is wrong, right? It's kind of overlapping with pronunciation. Or I'm sure you've played the telephone game where the students tell a message to another student and they pass it on, and eventually at the end you get something different. So again, that's a bit of listening and speaking at the same time. And along with listening, I should also mention that I also teach note taking strategies. The Cornell note taking you might have heard of, where you leave some space on the left hand side for any questions or notes. And then the right hand side, you take short notes. At the end, you summarize it after the lesson in your own words, again, processing the information. And then the notes, that's why we leave space on the left hand side so we can go back and then fill in those blanks, either get it from a classmate or from the textbook, but it's good to have that. So I also teach that. And I also teach abbreviations. Okay? For example, you know this word, I'm sure. I put it in the chat. MGMT would be management, or LIT apostrophe LY would be literally. DIFFE would be, that's my abbreviation for different, and DIFFI is my abbreviation for difficult. So you notice what's more important, vowels or consonants? I think you notice that consonants are more important. You can have one or two vowels, but consonants are more important. And then that way, students take short notes, right? Don't need sentences, just phrases and words are enough. And try to get them get the message across that they don't have to write down everything. Some of them will try to write down everything. Most important words are nouns, verbs, and adjectives. adverbs, maybe adverbs, but that's it. You don't really need to worry about articles, prepositions, conjunctions, interjections. Those words are not that important. All right. Does anybody want to write down an abbreviation that they use? For example, PL, I'm sure you know, is for people. Okay, the note-taking, it's called the Cornell method. All right, then in chat. The note-taking. I also teach that along with note-taking strategies, these abbreviations that I've mentioned. Yes, VS for versus. Good. TA for what? Teaching assistant? What does TA stand for? Thanks, yeah. THX, good. Good. Maybe GJJ can tell us what TA stands for. I just use it for teaching assistant, but I'm sure you have a different SD for somebody. Yeah. SDH for something. Good. And then you can encourage students to develop their own system of abbreviations. All right. Okay. So this is all the time we had for today. Oh, for thanks. Thank you, TH. Thanks. Okay, that's new. I haven't seen that before. That's okay. There are always new ones. So thanks again for being here. And before you go, I would just like to ask you to complete a short survey, if possible. And I would like to, once again, thank you for being here, for dedicating time out of your busy schedule. So here is the link, but I'll let me just copy and paste it into the chat so that you could complete it right away. It just takes a few minutes to do so. So we would appreciate if you could fill that out. And thank you for being here. We'd like to wish you much success in your teaching career, especially with teaching listening and with the other skills as well. And hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And if you could just complete the survey now, that would be much appreciated. Thank you again for being here. Enjoy the rest of your day.